Thank you for tuning into Inflection's Crowdsource Recap. This session was all about engaging the empowered learner, building curriculum and instruction for student-driven project-based learning. Keep watching for key insights presented by Alexa Ashiel, a project manager at Inflection, and Elise Kuykendall, Inflection's Director of Partnerships. All right, everybody. So I am excited to dive into the topic of how to engage learners through project-based learning. So when I was in the classroom, this method of teaching and learning not only created the space for me to be creative with unit planning, it also challenged my students, which made class exciting. And I want to give credit to this amazing organization called PBL Works, because the next couple of slides is where we re- uh, receive this information. And honestly, I'd highly recommend you check them out if you're looking to dive deeper into the world of PBL. So let's talk about what project-based learning is not. All right, project-based learning is not a project that comes after the content is delivered. So, for example, when I was teaching US history, one of our essential questions centered around social justice movements and whether or not their method of advocacy was effective. In the first couple of years of teaching, we taught the content and then had students write a paper answering the essential question. That is not an example of project-based learning because we still taught the content traditionally, and then we provided this project as an after effect. After participating in PBL Works and learning that project-based learning is actually a teaching method where students gain knowledge and skills by working for an extended period of time to investigate and respond to an authentic, engaging, and complex question, problem, or challenge, we shifted our teaching method and had students investigate issues within our school community that they believed needed to be changed. So instead of having them learn about social justice movements or activism in the traditional context, what we had them do instead was answer the question, what is a problem within our school community that we want to change? Then they researched the advocacy methods. They chose one that they felt would be most effective, and then they actually implemented it. And that is how the dress code policy at our school was actually changed. So that is an example of project-based learning because it was student inquiry that guided the project. Me and my co-teacher pretty much just acted as a guide. And then the project that they actually was working on not only had impact inside the classroom, but it reverberated outside of the classroom. So they actually were able to say, hey, protest was an effective method of activism. What if we utilize that in our school to change dress code? And then the dress code was changed. So another example of PBL done right comes from Magnolia High School. Students here saw a need in their community, and it was that there was not access to healthy food options. And so, because this school encouraged civil engagement, teachers were able to integrate this project into the school's curriculum. And instead of discussing the idea of a garden or just researching food deserts or just researching how other people might have, brought healthy foods into the community and writing a paper or making a poster board about it, they actually learned how to develop a community garden, and the school itself developed the Magnolia Agri-Science Community Center, where students learn the skills necessary to continue to run, operate, and sustain this community garden. So this is more of an example of project-based learning because if we look back at the chart, we see that part of the project of the community garden is that it was integrated into the curriculum. All right. It was driven by student inquiry. How can we bring healthy food options to our community? The instructional team of the school was able to align this to academic standards, allowing students to focus on the product and the process of creating and sustaining a garden. It inherently involved collaboration with students and the teacher, and most importantly, it had real world application. The community garden project was shared beyond the walls of the classroom, and it is a gift that keeps on giving to the community. So those are just a couple examples as to what project-based learning is. and also hope that this showcased to you what project-based learning is not.
So now we're going to explore a framework called the Four Keys, which was developed by Inflection's founder, Dr. David Conley. These four keys, think, know, act, and go, help students, families, and educators identify and prioritize the skills that students need to be successful after high school. In order to prepare students to be lifelong learners, they need the ability to think deeply about what they're doing, know contextually why they learn, act purposefully to achieve their goals, and go successfully through life's transitions. So think about, a skill that helped make you successful in your life. How was that skill identified and developed in the classroom? Has it been identified or developed in any classrooms that you've been in? We're sharing this with you because the holistic focus of the four keys aligns really well with the real world emphasis of project-based learning. Students who experience project-based learning naturally engage with all of the four keys. As a former teacher, I get it. It's already February and we're thinking about creating a whole unit based on PBL when you see the home stretch of May and June already in the horizon. It doesn't seem really feasible now. But we believe that this classroom observation tool, it can support you in assessing if your teaching staff is even ready to integrate project-based learning as a teaching method. So it's a great first step, especially when we're in the midst of spring. What you'll notice is that each of the four keys has questions that students should be learning how to answer in the classroom. When students are engaging in holistic learning, they should be asking these questions as they experience the lesson. So let's check out the toolkit resource that's placed in the chat and discuss the following. Looking at the four keys questions for students, how do you see any of those questions aligning with project-based learning? Or you can discuss where you are at in your PBL journey and how you can use what you've learned from classroom observations to enhance PBL adoption in your school. You can also discuss how, as teachers, can they apply this protocol to their own classroom or collaborate with other teachers to do some sort of paired observation protocol. The how do I know I'm on the right track was a question I used to get a lot as a teacher from students. And I would usually get it from students who were like in my honors classes. And they sometimes struggled with, understanding with not being spoon-fed, and like they want to know, am I doing it right, or am I wasting time, or am I not on the right track? Like they want to be very, very efficient. And so that is something that I struggled with as a younger teacher with, like, okay, how do I harness this energy of like, it's nice that they're always checking in, but then how do I create some independence so that they can know, okay, here's how I can make sure that I'm on the right track, or here's some questions that I can ask outside of, things like that. So that's interesting. We're talking about the think and the know. It's like even some of the frustrations I have with folks living in or my students living in the think and the know can be really solved by the act and the go. But so many times as teachers, you're like, oh, well, how come they don't just come like that? But this really sets those mindsets and those ways of going about things as really explicit learning outcomes, and kind of puts it back on you as the teacher, like, oh, okay, how am I setting them up? And you're right, project-based learning, that is a huge way to be able to set them up for spaces. Even when you're talking about like, how do I develop my identity while respecting the culture of people around me? I could apply that to, well, this is how we're going to go about things when you're trying to check, you don't know if you're on the right track. It can be like a classroom cultural reset. And that is something that I have done in February, because sometimes you need it. Like, okay, now we're doing it. Here's a new thing that we're going to try because things weren't hitting the right way. So I think there's definitely, even if it's not a whole PBL unit, just plucking one of those act and goes and setting a goal for yourself as a teacher, like, how I'm gonna make my classroom a little bit more like this.
Thanks for watching. For more resources on project-based learning and the 4 keys, visit portico.inflection.org. And be sure to keep an eye out for our next crowdsource workshop.